Welcome everybody to a new episode of B&B Movie Reviews. As you can see, again, we are not in the studio. Yes, we are in this box, Brad.
I like it. I like being in the box that is my home.
Nice. I know it is kind of nice to be in your house. All right, so we're going to get started. This week, we are going to talk about Karate Kid, the new film from the Talk to Me directors of Would Bring Her Back. We have a new movie in the world of John Wick with Ballerina, and there is a new remake. No, this is not Disney. This is DreamWorks with How to Train Your Dragon. So, Brad,
Yes.
we are going to start with... We're going to start with the Karate Kid. So let me go ahead and read off the synopsis to Karate Kid. So after Kung Fu prodigy Li Fong relocates to New York City, he attracts unwanted attention from a local karate champion and embarks on a journey to enter the ultimate karate competition with the help of Mr. Han and Daniel LaRusso. That synopsis is
It's missing a few things.
I don't want to say misleading, but this movie feels like it's kind of a tale of two different films.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is properly called The Karate Kid Legends, Bryan.
Yes,
and
it
the
is.
marketing around this film is all about bringing a few of those legends back onto the big screen. Jackie Chan from the 2010 The Karate Kid sequel, reboot, legacy
yeah.
sequel, and then obviously Ralph Macchio from the original The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was super pumped to see both of these legends on the big screen. Mostly, like, I was excited to see Jackie Chan back on the big screen. Anytime you can see
Yeah.
Jackie Chan on the big screen is a good time.
Absolutely.
This movie, though, doesn't give you a lot of those too. And I'm not actually mad about it because Benjamin Wong or Wang, I'm
Wang,
not
I
sure
think
how
it
he
is.
pronounces it, is fantastic in the film. You know, he's from an American-born Chinese, one of my favorite comic book adaptations of recent memory. And we also get this crazy subplot with Joshua Jackson that I don't think was revealed at all in the trailers, but I had a great time with it.
You know what? That was a big surprise to me because you're right. When you hear the name Karate Kid Legends and you're looking forward to Jackie Chan and Daniel LaRusso kind of coming together, kind of bridging these two, I don't know, I don't even want to say two different worlds, but kind of two different worlds, kind of bringing them together, then that's what I think is kind of bringing people into the theater. But when you actually get in, you said it perfectly, Ben Wang, who I think has so much charisma, really carries this movie from beginning to end. And you kind of fall in love with his character at the beginning of this film. And when he comes over to America and he moves to New York City and we get that Joshua Jackson story, I found myself really kind of falling in love with that world and those characters and loving that story and kind of taking the Karate Kid trope and those conventions that we know of the original trilogy and those movies and kind of twisting it a little bit on its head by kind of reversing the Karate Kid story when you have now the student is the teacher to an older person and teaching them ways of Kung Fu that he can use it in a boxing match. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Ways of Kung Fu, which is also interesting because it's the Karate Kid, right?
Yeah, that's true too.
You know, there's some odd things at play there that were touched upon a little bit in the 2010 film because
Yeah.
Jackie Chan's Mr. Han is, you know, dealing with wushu, dealing with Kung Fu. But I like how this movie begins actually with a scene from The Karate Kid Part 2 where Pat Morita's Mr. Miyagi is explaining to Ralph Macchio's Daniel-san that, you know, his long ago ancestors, drunk fisherman, travels to China and basically steals Kung Fu and interprets it into karate. Now, it removes a lot of the political context that is wrapped up in that his actual historical situation. Please go watch all of Bruce Lee's movies to understand that historical context a little bit better. But I like that they're acknowledging, like, okay, to make Jackie Chan in this movie work, Ben Wang in this movie work, we actually have to deal with some real history here that was briefly touched upon in The Karate Kid Part 2. And I love bringing Ben Wang from China into the United States because his mom, like Daniel-san's mom before him, got a job, a better life. We got to chase that better life, and that's where this better life is taking us. But Ben Wang is a pretty great kung fu kid already.
He is.
And so now we have to find a way to make this great kung fu kid the Karate Kid. And, you know, it does some stretching, but I enjoyed that stretching.
Yeah, and like I was saying, this is kind of a tale of two halves. So let's talk a little bit about how this movie kind of shifts to kind of become, or try to become, more of a traditional Karate Kid movie, where I felt like the first half of this movie was really interesting, and I loved that take of what they were doing. Then we kind of transitioned to, I guess, the latter, and this movie is only an hour and 30 minutes. So literally, I mean, to stuff basically two movies within the hour and 30 minutes, you got basically two 45-minute kind of short films, where this movie kind of follows more of that traditional kind of storyline of the Karate Kid, where we get into what's the karate tournament, the five boroughs, the something of the five boroughs.
The five boroughs,
Yeah, and then we have our antagonist that's kind of similar to the antagonist that we've seen from some of the other films, and then it kind of speeds to the climax of the resolution when we shift into that second half of the film, which I find a little less interesting. But overall, I gotta say, I've still enjoyed my experience of watching it. But how was that shift for you?
Oh, it's terrible. It's a super messy movie. It feels kind of all over the place. It feels very forced. The final tournament, I think, is also awkwardly edited and handled. I think the threat level from the quote-unquote villain of the story doesn't really land the way that William Zabka landed that character in the original Karate Kid. They do this like rooftop tournament situation, and some of that really looked ugly to me. I feel like we lost a lot of the tension of watching Ben Wang work his way up to the final fight. It just sort of felt like, and now it's final fight time, and he's going to do this special move that he has not been able to do for a long time, but now he's got the confidence to do it. And we get a pretty fun training montage with Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan training Ben Wang. But it just rushes. It rushes the climax of this movie.
Yeah, it does. And I'm not the biggest fan of how they handle the back half of this movie, but like I said, that first half was such a surprise. I thought the chemistry between Ben Wang and Joshua Jackson was really excellent, and I just loved the kind of twist that they did with that trope. So for me, I gotta say, it's a B plus, but Brad, what's your rating? And let the people know how we rate the show.
Yeah, we're the B&B show, so we rate movies either B plus if we like them or a B minus if we don't like them. And my rating for this one is going to lean into the B plus category. I loved the Karate Kid as a kid. I watched all of them, including the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank. But at the same time, I don't hold them in this revered light. They were fun films, kind of disposable films. They had good emotion to them. They captured my attention, and that's all present in the Karate Kid Legends. And so even though it's a little messy, everyone involved, I think, is very charismatic and enjoyable. And I love Joshua Jackson from my Fringe days, and so it was great to see him in the boxing ring, even if his story didn't really gel with the rest of the story.
Yeah, Dawson's Creek for me. Pacey. So B plus for you?
Yeah, B plus.
B plus. Yeah. All right. So that is a B plus for both of us. So we are going to make a drastic shift to the Filippo brothers. Their second film with their stellar debut with Brad. I can already see your face with "Talk to Me." They're back with their sophomore effort with "Bring Her Back." So the synopsis is real short. I'll read this and we'll get right into it. A brother and sister uncover a terrifying ritual at the secluded home of their new foster mother. Short, sweet, and to the point. There's a lot to unpack there, though.
Brian, this was such an experience watching this movie with you.
Oh, God.
During that press screening. That whole crowd, it was... This movie is so punishing. It's one of the most brutal, uncomfortable movie-going experiences I've ever had in a theater. We kept looking at each other. There were times when I could not look at the screen because of the atrocities that were occurring. If you have problems with violence and children interacting, you gotta take yourself out of this movie.
Yeah, this movie, it's very cringy when it comes to a lot of the graphic, the violence and the gore of it. You're right. There are moments in this movie where I have to look away from the screen. I'm looking at the corner, looking at the ceiling.
A lot of mouth problems.
Yeah. So it's extremely graphic. But on the flip side of that, man, when we talk about the Filippo brothers and what they've done with Talk to Me and going into this movie feels like, even though those two movies are not connected, it feels like they are a piece of each other, because these two films are movies that are really kind of delving in and examining the idea of grief.
Talk to Me is a little bit more of a thrill ride. It does deal with some of the similar themes as this film, but I feel like you can have a good time with Talk to Me.
You can.
Bring Her Back is not a good time.
This movie is not a good time. No. Thematically, I think they're still kind of talking about the same thing.
100%.
So, yeah. And
does Bring Her Back say anything that Talk to Me doesn't? I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I also don't know if that's necessarily a negative in any way.
Yeah. Okay.
To me, the empathy in this film that is cast on every single character, Sally Hawkins playing the antagonist of this movie.
Yeah.
There are moments when you are going to absolutely hate her, and yet this film gives you her emotional reasons for doing what she does, and it gives you access to the pain that she's experiencing that pushes her into a position of true villainy, and I think that might actually be a little important, the way that this film cares for a person who commits such evil actions.
No, you're absolutely right, because there's no doubt about it that she's the antagonist of this story, and kind of the passive aggressive way that she treats her foster kids when they come into her home.
It starts passive aggressive, and then it gets aggressive.
It gets extremely aggressive. And I've never seen Sally Hawkins kind of play that speed before in any of the performances that I've seen. But it's interesting what you say about her as an antagonist and the villainy of her character, but as the movie progresses and goes along, the movie finds a way for us to sympathize. I don't want to say empathize, but
I would say it definitely does. There's empathy and there's sympathy.
Yeah,
it puts you into the headspace of that character, and I think what's important about that is telling audiences that these characters are not supernatural. They're not evil with a capital E. They are people doing things. Now, there are supernatural elements in this story, and there
Yeah.
might be capital E evil in this story, but there's also lowercase evil in this story, and it's so easy for myself, and I imagine others, to dismiss actions
Yes.
like these as inhuman. But no,
Yeah.
these are very human actions.
I mean, I'm excited about these directors. This is their second feature film, and I think they've knocked it out the park both times. I mean, this, and we said it coming out of the theater, like, this is a damn good movie that I never want to watch again.
Yeah, I loved stumbling out of the dark and into the light of the lobby, and all our fellow journalists are there, and we were just like looking at each other like, oh, what did we just all go through? And we were all processing it, and we were giggling because we didn't know how to deal with the stuff bubbling in our bellies. It was, I don't know, like, I think it was a truly special movie going experience.
Yeah.
I will never watch this movie again, and it's a movie I don't know that I could recommend to anybody.
Yeah, that's the true thing. I don't know who this movie will actually be for, or who I could recommend this to.
You have to really know the person.
Yeah, and you have to be. I think if you're a diehard horror fan, I think you will kind of. Maybe I don't.
It depends on what kind of horror you like.
That's true too. And because I don't want to say enjoy, because to me, I just don't know if this is a movie that you can enjoy. But at least get something out of it.
Thinking about the movie, like,
Same.
it was a hard
Same.
watch for me. It was very difficult, and I think when I left the movie, I was leaning on maybe I didn't even like the movie because of how bad it made me feel, and
Yeah.
how I felt so trapped in the theater watching it. But
Yeah.
as I've had time away from the movie, I feel like maybe I love the movie.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this movie a lot too since we saw it, and that's the testament to really a good to great film. Is like when you can leave the theater and it just keeps you thinking about it. And this is one of those films. So yeah, it's a B+ for me. What's your rating for this?
Yeah, B+
one?
for me as well.
Nice. All right, so we are going to move on to the world of John Wick. Man, we've gone from family to horror, now to action. We're covering all the genres, man. All right, so Ballerina, an assassin trained in the traditions of the Ruska Roma, an organization sets out to seek revenge after her father's death. That's a pretty straightforward action revenge plot.
Yeah, it takes place between John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick Chapter 4. We see a certain scene from John Wick Chapter 3 from a different angle in this movie. As far as spin-offs go, I don't think I was necessarily, like, craving one from the John Wick world, but I do like being in this place.
Yeah.
I do like these characters. And there are certain action scenes in this movie that I think are pretty phenomenal and worth the price of admission.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this movie at leaving the theater, and we talked a lot about structure. Because I know for you, we talked a little bit about the idea of an origin story. You know, whether it's an origin story for an action hero or heroine or a superhero, that idea of the origin story, this kind of follows that kind of beat for beat. There have been talks behind the scenes that the shepherd of the John Wick universe, Chad Stahelski, who directed the last 4 films, came in and directed a lot of the reshoots because the director is Len Wiseman, and you can kind of see where a lot of that. You can see
the Len Wiseman scenes, and you can see the Chad Stahelski action scenes. I definitely lean more to other scenes, the Chad scenes.
Yeah, because I think, and you can tell in the second half of the film, some of the action in this movie is extremely inventive. In the ingenuity of how they stage a lot of these different action sequences. I mean, the whole thing with the gun, with the knife taped to the bottom of the handle, the ice skates, the grenade. There's so many sequences that I think
the flamethrowers.
The flamethrower, I think, is going to be. I mean, when you talk about just now looking at these 5 movies in the John Wick universe, the flamethrower sequence, whatever you think about this movie, is going to be one of the standout sequences for me in all of the John Wick movies. I thought that sequence was stellar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the beginning of this movie. I think
Yeah.
it spends way too much time setting up the character. I kind of wish we just jumped right into the action and then picked up the information of why she's doing what she's doing as we move along through the action. I think that Ana de Armas, who I really love in a lot of movies, I don't find her particularly interesting in this film. And,
I agree with that.
And putting Keanu Reeves in here for a few sequences to play off her really just underscores how uninteresting of a character she is. As written and as depicted in Ballerina.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, and again, like you say, we're fans of her. It's not her fault. I just think the movie and the script doesn't really do her any
100%. And I think the villains in this film are really weak. I love Gabriel Byrne. He does what Gabriel Byrne's going to do with a mustache twirling villain. But there are some really rough henchmen that we have to suffer through in Ballerina. That I think is kind of unforgivable in a John Wick movie, which usually has the best, nameless goons on the planet.
I know. And they had opportunity in this movie to really kind of flesh out or at least make a moment of a lot of the villains or those kind of number one goons that they have in the movie. Yeah, I'll give this one a B+ for me.
But Bryan, is it better than any John Wick movie?
No.
Not even close.
No. This is out of the 5 John Wick movies that we have now. This is easily number 5. So, what's your rating for this one?
It's on the edge. But I said it was worth the price of admission. Flamethrower, knife gun, grenade belt. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so that's a B+ for both of us. And our next film, and let me bring up the synopsis real quick. Oh, sorry to the viewers here. How to Train Your Dragon. The beloved animated movie from 2010 is getting a live-action remake. So here is the synopsis for this one. As an ancient threat endangers both Vikings and dragons alike on the Isle of Berk, the friendship between Hiccup and an inventive Viking and Toothless, a night fury dragon, becomes the key to both species forging a new future together.
You do not need to read that synopsis because it's just How to Train Your Dragon, but with people, human bodies. That's it.
You know what, Brad? But we saw this movie at a press screening, and this was my first experience. Now, I know of How to Train Your Dragon just through geek and pop culture osmosis. So I know like some of the beats that were coming, but I've never seen the animated movie. So right before this recording, if you actually go check my Letterboxd,
oh my God,
I had just literally finished watching the animated movie.
Hold on. Don't tell me what you thought of the animated film yet. Just put that on pause. Okay. Let's stick to the live action film.
All right, let's go there then. So yeah, this was my first kind of initiation into this world and into this franchise. You of course have seen. I believe you saw the trilogy.
Yeah, I've seen all the How to Train Your Dragon movies.
So, and I know you like the animated movies. Going into this,
I love the first one. 2 and 3.
Okay,
I could take or leave.
Okay. What were your thoughts coming out of this one?
Well, I mean, it is a pretty faithful retelling of How to Train Your Dragon. It's been a while since I've watched the original animated film. I know they threw in some extra bits here and there. The film is definitely longer. The live action film is definitely longer than the original film. But we've got Gerard Butler back playing the dad. The kid actors are okay. I'm gonna be nice.
Yeah, I'll be nice.
I think it's challenging to play against a lot of blue screen work, a lot of animated characters, because like even though the human characters are live action, the dragons are still just cartoons. And Toothless is a pretty great reproduction of the How to Train Your Dragon Toothless, the original. I'm sure it looks a lot better now because a lot of time has passed, technology wise. But the design still works. So like everything with Toothless, I still found myself being emotionally wrapped up in his story with Hiccup.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I had experienced this in animation and the addition of human bodies, though that's just boring human biology, I was really missing what animation can bring to a story in this movie. It just felt like a huge downgrade.
It felt like, to me, it was a kind of a copy of something better that came before it. Something in the beginning, kind of action set piece, felt off to me. And now, watching the animated movie and seeing that it kind of starts off the same way, that for me kind of worked a little bit better in the animated movie.
But like
but
that
there was something.
storybook opening in animation just makes sense, whereas in this film, the storybook opening with its extremely dark nighttime cinematography just looks muddy and ugly.
There's something with animation and live action where in live action, you talked about the blue screen and the green screen and the visual effects, that sometimes you don't get distracted by that when you have animation. And that's why I think you can kind of get more kind of invested and kind of encompassed and kind of pulled into the world in animation, where live action, sometimes you can get pulled out if things don't, because you have the uncanny
the
valley.
compositing that's happening in live action.
Compositing. Yeah, and
because
so that's why I think
this movie is a cartoon, just with like, one layer of humans dropped in the front into the foreground, and you feel that layering, which is what I think you're talking about.
Yeah, so I say all that to say a lot of times that's why I prefer animation. I know a lot of times we see animated stuff, we're like, oh, this would be so great in live action. I mean, that's a bigger conversation we can have, but this movie kind of opens that up. For me personally, I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't really need a live action version of a great animated movie because I have the great animated movie.
Like, I love remakes. Some of my favorite films are remakes, where they actually remake something, where they adapt and they bring new ideas to a story, and that is the opposite of what is happening here. But if I was 11 years old and I had never seen How to Train Your Dragon before, and this was my first introduction to it, and I love dragons, maybe I would freaking love this. I don't know, but I'm not 11 years old. I'm an old man.
I know.
I want
both
my
of us are.
original.
For me, I'm going to go B- on this one.
Yeah.
It just like I said, I didn't enjoy a lot of the performances from the kids. I just thought that the like you were saying, the green screen and blue screen just looked very muddy. It took me out of it, and ultimately, I just kind of felt bored watching the film. Like nothing really resonated with me. So, what about you?
Yeah, I give it a B-. I did not enjoy this experience. I could not possibly recommend it. I was still hooked by some of the original emotions that are buried in the script, and the characters, and the design of Toothless and friends.
Yeah,
but that's it.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm not saying like this is the worst movie ever. For me, it just didn't work, so it's just a B-.
It's no Karate Kid Legends.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Few things are. So speaking of that, let's go back and recap what we reviewed on this show. So we started with Karate Kid Legends, which we gave a B+ for me and Brad. Then we moved over to Bring Her Back. A great movie that we will probably never watch again. That was a B+ for both of us. The World of John Wick, Ballerina. That's the official title. Yeah. That was a B+ for both of us. I think I like that one a little more than Brad, but we both gave that one a B+. And then How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake of the animated classic, was a B- for me and Brad. So, those are our thoughts on those films. Please check us out at what's our email address?
B&B movie reviews at
gmail.com. I don't have the teleprompter in front of me. Anyway, that's what you get when it's virtual. I love it. I love it because we just kind of be ourselves and we're just kind of loose and we don't have to.
Yeah, we don't have to pretend. We don't have to perform.
Yeah. We don't have to perform for the camera.
Yeah.
There you go. It's just us talking. There you go. And with that, we will see you at the movies.